The hour of convening having arrived, all members of the House will please report to the floor and take your seats. All members of the House will please report to the floor and take seats. The clerk will ring the bell. All members of the House will please report to the floor and take seats. We are going to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. Before we begin, I want to make mention that we open our session today on a somber note. Our neighbors to the north in Tennessee, particularly in the Nashville area, have been hit very, very hard by tornadoes overnight. Last report, 9 people are dead as a result of those storms. More than 20 are injured and in the hospital. Dozens of homes and other structures are destroyed, and the photographs that I've seen from downtown Nashville and East Nashville look like a war zone. So let's keep those individuals that have been impacted by those storms in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you very much. Also, just a bit of information. As you know, last night the task force on the coronavirus confirmed 2 cases here in Georgia, and they're dealing with those now. Dr. Toomey from the Department of Public Health is meeting this morning with the CDC, and I will be briefed sometime after lunch by her and her team, and we'll get out information as soon as we have that for all of you to have and to use as you see fit. So please be seated. We will begin our day today with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 138th House District, Representative Mike Chokas. Representative Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, it's an honor and a privilege for me to introduce Pastor Bud Womack. But before I get started, he's accompanied today by his beautiful wife, Miss Faye, and one of his 2 daughters, his lovely daughter, Kelsey, and she's an educator, or will be an educator. So if you 2 will stand up, we'd like to welcome you to Georgia's People's House. I met Reverend Bud, several years ago, we did a road dedication for a fallen hero in my part of the country, Victor Anderson, and we named a section of Highway 19 between Americus and Ellaville in his memory. And Victor served not only courageously with the United States Army, but he also served in both sheriff's department, the sheriff's department in Sly County and in Sumter County. And I got to meet Bud, and we talked, and instantly we became friends. He serves as the chaplain not only for the Sumter County Sheriff's Department, but also for the State Patrol. And he has to deal with some of the emotional issues and spiritual issues that our fine men and women in law enforcement are faced with on a daily basis. And I guess that's what prepared him for me. Anyway, we became great friends, and I had him here last year. And not only is he a man of God, but he's also a man of the people. Last night we had dinner together, and for an hour and a half nonstop, we kept talking and talking and talking and catching up and enjoying it. And I know you'll be inspired by today's message. So let me introduce you to my very close friend, Reverend Bud Womack.
I just want to point out that we did spend an hour and a half at the restaurant, but Mike done most of the talking. I know you may have a hard time believing that. We knew that. I do want to thank you, Mike, for inviting me back again. I hope that last time I was here, almost a year ago today, talked to you about living in a blessed field, and I hope in the past 12 months you've found yourself living in a blessed field. I want to thank you, Speaker Ralston, for letting me be here, and also all of you for what you do in the state of Georgia and how you conduct business and make a change in who we are and as a state. I want to start out by telling you a joke about a preacher. Young preacher first started out preaching. He got his first revival, 250 people in attendance. Little old lady walked up to him after church and said, "Son, you just something else." He smiled real big, shook her hand, hugged her neck, and walked away. The next night he came back. There was only 150 people there. Same little old lady walked up to him, smiled at him real big, and said, "Son, you something else." The next night, 50 people showed up for the revival, and the young preacher was so depressed and let down. Done the best he could preaching. After church, same little old lady walked up to him, and she said, "Son, you just something else." He said, "Wait a minute, ma'am. You've told me that for 3 nights. We've dropped 100 people in attendance every night since then. Why do you keep saying that?" She said, "Because you ain't a preacher, you something else. You need to figure it out." I don't know if that fits me or not, but whatever it does, it does. I want to talk to you on this thought this morning just briefly, that the backside may be the best side. Romans 8:37 says, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." I want to tell you about a man that I know. He was raised in a poor home that at best they barely got by. On the rare occasion that the family was allowed to go out and possibly treat themselves to a burger, they were allowed, he and his siblings, to order a hamburger, but the family literally could not afford cheese. He knew what it was to have hand-me-downs. If you look around now, we pay good money for tore-up pants. We didn't do that when I was growing up. That would have been a large embarrassment. But this guy knew what hand-me-downs were. School, the other kids would get extra things. They could buy an extra milk, possibly even ice cream on ice cream day. This young man was often left out of that equation, laughed at because of his clothes, looked down on because of where he came from. At the age of 16, he moved to a new town. His family moved away, and he started high school in that other town. A new beginning, but with the same clouded mind and wounded heart. Nothing seemed to work in his favor, so he chose the wrong path. He began to experiment with drugs. He discovered the numbing effects of alcohol. He and his dad couldn't get along, and so a quick stop by the local liquor store and a little drink to have the numbing effect so he could deal with the inevitable fighting and arguing that would ensue as soon as he got home with his dad. One day, he was invited to go to church. He was told about Jesus, and he accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior, and boy, it changed his life. He felt so much better. It's the first time he'd ever felt totally and 100% accepted. He graduated high school, met a young girl. Man, he fell head over heels in love with her. After dating for nearly 3 years, they got married. About 6 years later, when they found out their first child was going to be born, all hell broke loose in his life. Everything he touched broke down. He just couldn't get anything right. Whatever he touched seemed to fall apart. Everywhere he turned, there was another attack, somebody else saying something or doing something to bring him down. He found himself with the same feelings he had when he was a kid, just not good enough, rejected, looked down on, and also talked about. One day, church for him really happened. There was an empty seat in front of him. When he sat down, he thought, well, I'll just drudge through another chance of going to church. It probably isn't going to work. Set right down in front of him was this man about 6'8", probably 350 pounds. He sat there disgusted and aggravated, and reluctantly, he stayed in church that day. He couldn't tell you what the preacher said. He couldn't tell you what songs were sung. With some 800 people in attendance that day, he got up from his seat and decided when the altar call was given, he'd give it one more shot, because he even felt rejected by God. He went down to the altar, nearly 100 people in that altar. He knelt down, and this was what he prayed: God, if you still love me, let somebody come by and pray for me. I just need a touch. Nobody out of 100 people in that altar even walked by and bumped his foot as he knelt. Still feeling rejected and let down, he got up to go back to his seat. Just before he got back to his seat, that big old tall, wide man that blocked his total view during church stepped out in the aisle, held his arms out, and said, "Come here, son." That young man fell into the chest of that big old guy and just wept. This is what he said to him. He said, "Son, the arms you feel right now are not the arms of a man, but they're the arms of your heavenly Father, and he wants you to know he still loves you." My friend, that changed his life forever. Now, you may ask, how do you know so much about this young man? It's simple. That young man was me. I lived that life. And here's what I want you to hear today. Just because somebody else has made up in their mind that you're nothing, it doesn't mean God has made up his mind. He loves you unconditionally, takes you just like you are, and promises never to leave you that way. Isaiah 54:17 says this: "No weapon formed against you will ever prosper." Now I want you to notice, it doesn't say that there won't be a weapon formed. It doesn't say that there won't be difficult times. It doesn't say we won't face hardships. It just says that they won't prosper. And I think that's good news. I want to close with this thought. I always thought I couldn't. I always thought I never would or never could, until I found out I could, as long as I've got him and I'm remembering that he loves me. Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." So the backside, what we see as the backside, very well may be the best side. It's determined by what we choose to do with our life. Will you pray with me? Kind and gracious Heavenly Father, I want to take a personal moment just to thank you for reminding me that you love me. Thank you, Lord, for every step that I took in life. God, today there are representatives from all over the state of Georgia, leadership of this state. They need to be reminded that you love them. God, that you can guide their hands, you can guide their voice. God, every time they vote on legislation, I pray, God, that you would deliver it into their hearts that you love them. I pray, Lord, for strength in their lives, blessings on their homes, enjoyment in their job as a representative. I ask you, God, to walk with them. Bless this chamber and its leadership. We ask you, God, to bless the state of Georgia. And God, we ask you to continue to bless the United States of America. It's in the lovely and precious name of Jesus Christ that we pray. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. Chair recognizes Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Information and Audits read the proceedings of the previous legislative day and found them to be correct. They're correct.
Representative Williams, do you think he really read it? Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, on the 59th, moves following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Reports of standing committees. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1084 by Representative Chokas, the 138th, Jaspers, the 11th, Watson, the 172nd, Corbett, the 174th, and England, the 116th. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 12 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to commissions and other agencies.
Higher education.
House Bill 1085 by Representative Dempsey, the 13th, Martin of the 49th, Smyrie of the 135th, Dubnick of the 29th, Newton of the 123rd. Bill be titled an act to amend Code Section 23-411, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to definitions regarding tuition equalization.
Higher education.
House Bill 1086 by Representative Setzler, the 35th, Abstration of the 104th, Smyrie of the 135th, Burchett of the 176th, and Bodie of the 62nd, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Code Section 9, 16, and 15 in the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to stay of civil forfeiture.
Judiciary non-civil.
House Bill 1087 by Representative Turner, the 21st, Caldwell, the 20th, Cantrell, the 22nd, and Carson, the 46th. Bill be titled an act to provide for a homestead exemption from the city of Holly Springs ad valorem taxation.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 1088 by Representative Jones, the 167th. The bill being titled an act to amend an act creating a new charter for the city of Ludowici.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Resolution 1350 by Representative Jones, the 91st, and McCall, the 33rd. A resolution urging the President of the United States and Congress to enact legislation.
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Silcox, the 52nd, Jones, the 47th, Cooper, the 43rd, and others, to be titled an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding labor and industrial relations.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 271 by Senator Kennedy, the 18th, Cowser to the 46th, Stone to the 23rd, Burke of the 11th, and Jones to the 25th. Bill be titled an act to amend Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to courts.
Retirement.
Senate Bill 301 by Senator Tillery, the 19th, Hill to the 4th, Robertson to the 29th, Mullis to the 53rd, Miller to the 49th. Bill being titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 6 of Title 42 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding detainers.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
Senate Bill 351 by Senator Watson the 1st, Albers the 56th, Jackson the 2nd, Walker the 20th, Miller the 49th, and others. Bill be titled an act to provide for the holding of a non-binding advisory referendum.
State Planning and Community Affairs.
Senate Bill 373 by Senator Kennedy, the 18th, Stone the 23rd, Johnson the 10th, Gooch the 51st, Cowser the 46th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 8 of Chapter 3 of Title 14 and Part 6 of Article 4 of Chapter 3 of Title 46, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to directors and officers of nonprofit corporations.
Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications.
Senate Bill 374 by Senator Kennedy, the 18th, Miller the 49th, Dugan the 30th, Gooch the 51st, and Walker the 20th. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 8 of Chapter 11 of Title 9 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to provisional and final remedies.
Insurance.
Senate Bill 393 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, Tillery the 19th, Albers the 56th, Martin of the 9th, and Kirkpatrick of the 32nd. Bill be titled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 and Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the university system.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
Senate Bill 396 by Senator Walker of the 20th, Wilkinson of the 50th, Black of the 8th, Anderson of the 24th, Hill of the 4th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 3 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to state symbols.
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
Senate Bill 435 by Senator Strickland of the 17th, Tillery the 19th, Kirkpatrick of the 32nd, Albers the 56th, Parent of the 42nd, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 and Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 35 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to procedure for sentencing.
Judiciary Non-Civil.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1069 by Representative Holcomb of the 81st, Buckner of the 137th, Williams of the 145th, McLaurin of the 51st, Paris of the 142nd, and others. A bill relating to limitations on prosecution. House Bill 1070 by Representative Gaines of the 117th, Dollar of the 45th, Hughley of the 136th, Widower of the 119th. A bill relating to condominiums. House Bill 1071 by Representative Gullett of the 19th, Montahan of the 17th, Martin of the 49th, Scoggins of the 14th, Dollar of the 45th, and others. A bill relating to telephone solicitations. House Bill 1072 by Representative Schofield of the 60th, Trenner of the 85th. A bill relating to other safety inspections and regulations. House Bill 1073 by Representative Watson of the 172nd, Jaspers of the 11th, Corbett of the 174th, and England of the 116th. A bill relating to development authorities. House Bill 1074 by Representative Efstration of the 104th, Dubnik of the 29th, and Setzler of the 35th, a bill relating to general provisions regarding the Department of Human Services. House Bill 1075 by Representative Holland of the 54th, Gardner of the 57th, Dreyer of the 59th, Jackson of the 64th, Evans of the 83rd, and others. A bill to amend an act to continue the existence of the Atlanta Independent School System. House Bill 1076 by Representative Holcomb of the 81st, Hitchens of the 161st, Frazier of the 126th, Astration of the 104th, Trammell of the 132nd, and others. A bill relating to sexual assault protocol. House Bill 1077 by Representative Kirby of the 114th, Trammell of the 132nd, Welch of the 110th, Werkheiser of the 157th, McLean of the 100th, and others. A bill relating to definitions for the Georgia Administrative Procedure Act. House Bill 1078 by Representative Welch of the 110th, Hawley of the 111th, Douglas of the 78th, Rutledge of the 109th, and Mathiak of the 73rd. A bill relating to general provisions regarding courts. House Bill 1079 by Representative Schofield of the 60th, Gardner of the 57th, Allen of the 40th, Buckner of the 137th, Alexander of the 66th, and others. A bill relating to medical assistance and insurance. House Bill 1080 by Representative Bazemore of the 63rd, Smyrie of the 135th, Beverly of the 143rd, Trammell of the 132nd, Bodie of the 62nd. A bill relating to special license plates promoting or supporting certain worthy agencies, funds, and nonprofit corporations. House Bill 1081 by Representative Rhodes of the 120th, Barr of the 103rd, Burns of the 159th, Corbett of the 174th. A bill relating to waste management, cost reimbursement fees, and surcharges. House Bill 1082 by Representative Powell of the 32nd, Ridley of the 6th, and Corbett of the 174th. A bill relating to abandoned motor vehicles. House Bill 1083 by Representative Petrie of the 166th, Williamson of the 115th, Earhart of the 36th, Jones of the 91st, Mathiak of the 73rd, and others. A bill relating to criminal procedure. House Resolution 1325 by Representative Bentley of the 139th. A resolution honoring the life and memory of Mr. Asa Charles Daniels, Jr., dedicating an interchange in his memory. House Resolution 1326 by Representative Gardner of the 57th, Dreyer of the 59th, and Thomas of the 56th. A resolution honoring the life of Dr. Vivian Harmon and dedicating a road in her memory. House Resolution 1327 by Representative Setzler of the 35th, Hughley of the 136th, Astration of the 104th, and Reeves of the 34th. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Claims of Wrongfully Convicted Persons. House Resolution 1328 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd, a resolution recognizing the Kicklighter family and dedicating a bridge in their honor. Senate Bill 362 by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th, Anderson of the 24th, Harper of the 7th, Burke of the 11th, and Rahman of the 5th. A bill relating to livestock running at large or straying. Senate Bill 371 by Senator Gooch of the 51st, Beach of the 21st, Jones of the 25th, Butler of the 55th, Harper of the 7th, and others. A bill relating to officers in the Department of Transportation. Senate Bill 450 by Senator Harper of the 7th, the bill to amend an act to reconstitute the Osceola-Irwin County Industrial Development Authority. Senate Resolution 690 by Senator Ligon Jr. of the 3rd, Hill of the 4th, Watson of the 1st, Jackson of the 2nd, and Harper of the 7th. A resolution encouraging the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund and other entities to support implementation of the Coastal Georgia Greenway through second readers.
Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Representative Jan Tankersley, the 160th District Chairman on the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Local, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals had under consideration the following bills of the House. This instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 922 do pass by substitute. House Bill 988 do pass. House Bill 1033 do pass. House Bill 1042 do pass. House Bill 1043 do pass. House Bill 1051 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Tankersley of the 160th District Chairman. Representative Astration of the 104th District Chairman on the Committee on Judiciary Non-Civil submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Judiciary Non-Civils had under consideration the following bills of the House. It instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 983 do pass. House Bill 994 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Astration of the 104th District Chairman. Representative Bill Hitchens of the 161st District Chairman on the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security has had under consideration the following bills and resolutions of the House and instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 903 do pass. House Bill 1160 do pass. House Resolution 1008 do pass. House Bill 641 do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Bill Hitchens, 161st District Chairman. That completes the reading of the reports of standing committees.
Okay, we're going on now to the local calendar. We're going on now to the local calendar, third reading and passage of uncontested local bills. What purpose does Representative Carpenter rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
Yes, sir. Speaker, I ask that House Bill 922 be recommitted from the committee from which it came.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill by substitute by Representative Carpenter, the 44th, House Bill 922, Whitfield County. House Bill 922 repeals a local constitutional amendment providing for the division of Whitfield County into school districts.
On the gentleman's motion that House Bill 922 be recommitted to the Intergovernmental Coordination Committee, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, it is so ordered. The clerk will read the local calendar.
House Bill 988 by Representative Bentley, the 139th, Macon County. House Bill 1033 by Representative Earhart of the 36th, Cobb County. House Bill 1042 by Representative Ralston of the 7th, Fannin County. House Bill 1043 by Representative Ralston of the 7th, Fannin County. House Bill 1051 by Representative Williams of the 148th, Town of Arabi.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bills? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall these bills now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bills on the local calendar will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of the bills on the local calendar, the ayes are 153, the nays are 0. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. We're going on now to morning orders. Going on now to morning orders. The chair is honored to recognize in the gallery the members of the Fannin County Board of Education in charge of one of the finest school systems in the state of Georgia. Y'all rise and let us say hello to you. Thank you. Chair recognizes Chairman Martin for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I want you to please take a moment and join me as we recognize our state colleges, State College Day at the Capitol. Participating institutions include Dalton State, ABAC, South Georgia College, Coastal Georgia, and Gordon State. I think some of them may be in the gallery, may be missing them at a photo, but if you're in the gallery, please stand and please take time to meet these individuals from these state colleges on State College Day at the Georgia Capitol. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Hobson for a morning order. Chair failed to mention earlier, but the time limit will be 1 minute each. 1 minute each for morning orders. Representative Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Today I rise in support of Women's History Month, and today we will hear about Mary Jackson. Mathematician Mary Jackson was one of a small group of African American women who worked as an aerospace engineer called human computers at NASA during the space age. Ms. Jackson excelled academically in a time of racial segregation. Her math and science skills earned her a position as a human computer for NASA, and she later became NASA's first black female engineer. Along with serving a vital role in the development of the space program, she helped other women and minorities advance their careers. Jackson died in February 2005 at the age of 83. The story of her groundbreaking contributions to NASA was later dramatized in the 2016 film Hidden Figures. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes for a morning order Chairman Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to recognize the College of Coastal Georgia. They're in the gallery, and I'd like to welcome to the People's House. Our college is just a great college in Georgia, one of the most affordable colleges, and has a great #1 nursing program, so welcome to the People's House. Thank you for coming.
Chair recognizes the Majority Caucus Whip, Representative Kelly, for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Haralson County Day here at the state capitol. We have a great group from Haralson County who's visiting with us today, and we have a couple of them in the balcony with us, I think, if they don't stand up and let us recognize you in the house. Thank y'all so much for being with us.
House will come to order. House will be at order. Chair recognizes Representative Houston Gaines for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is World Hearing Day at the Capitol. 466 million people worldwide have disabling hearing loss, 34 million of whom are children. Today, 97% of infants are screened for hearing loss, a major improvement from 40% in 2000. Today, we are honored to have several families here with us for this important day, and I'd ask for them to please stand in the gallery. Now, this issue is one that is also personal to my family. She has no idea I'm about to do this, but I'd like for my mother to please stand to be recognized. She's in the gallery. My mother, Vicki, has been deaf since early childhood. Technology is nothing like it is today. Yet she made her way through school and physical therapy school and became a well-accomplished physical therapist. The moment that I'll never forget was 15 years ago. We were all sitting around the kitchen table, and she kept hearing this noise. This was right after she got her first cochlear implant. We were all wondering, what is she hearing? And she said, "What is that noise? What is that noise?" It was the first time in her life she had heard a bird chirp. And that was a moment that our whole family will never forget. So I'm extremely proud of my mom, and she's an amazing woman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hawkins for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have the honor and privilege of recognizing the North Hall wrestling team who won their first AAA state wrestling tournament last Saturday. Their head coach, David Nichols, is here with them, and he would like to express his gratitude and appreciation to the Speaker for being able to be in this house today. Coach David Nichols has been coaching for 2 years at North Hall, along with assistant coach Pat Holcomb, who has been with the group for 20 years as a player and now a coach. And also a retired coach has come back, Coach White, who was coaching there when my kids were going to North Hall and is well known in the wrestling world in this state for taking kids to state tournaments over the many years. Coach Nichols and the assistant coaches not only coach wrestling but also coach values of life, and these lessons in life go far for the rest of their lives. If you would stand and be recognized in the house, and the house would recognize you there up there on the right-hand side. Coach Nichols, wrestling team from North Hall. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Holland for a morning order. I'm advised that we have 3 minutes left for morning orders. We have about 12 members left.
Thank you,
Somebody's
Mr.
going to
Speaker.
get carried over.
You know I can talk fast. In the heart of Buckhead in beautiful House District 54, there's a complex called Cathedral Towers that provides affordable housing and a safe environment that really emphasizes a strong sense of community. A civically engaged group of people from Cathedral Towers have come today to the Capitol to meet with their legislators and observe our democratic process. I want to recognize that group of Cathedral Towers residents who are joining us today. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Benton for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I want to call your attention to today being the 240th anniversary of the Revolutionary War Battle of Briar Creek. It was what we refer to in military terms, a major disaster for the American Army after having won the Battle of Kettle Creek several weeks previous. I want to point out that this was a battle in which the Americans actually had the upper hand in men, but were surprised in their attack. Later, General William Moultrie, who was from South Carolina, proclaimed that Briar Creek was so disastrous that it extended the war for another 12 months. In the governor's office today, there is a print, 1-gallon stand depicting this battle. I would recommend you go by and take a look at it. It's quite nice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative LaRicchia for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning we would like to recognize South Georgia State College. The president of South Georgia State College, Ingrid Sellers, is in the gallery this morning, her staff and some of the students. More than 2,000 students at South Georgia State College, 13 other countries, and 22 states. Thank y'all so much for being here this morning.
For the final 35 seconds of morning orders, the chair recognizes Representative Schofield.
So I got 35 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and House colleagues. I wanted to talk today about the significant value of natural hair textures and protective styles for Women's History Month. Culturally, natural hair texture is a part of every person's DNA. Economically, it's stated that natural hair industry is $2.5 billion industry. In the healthcare arena, it's known that chemical hair products lead to cancer and inflammatory diseases. Many people wear wigs, weaves, protective styles to protect and preserve their quality of life. While Georgia is known to be a great place to work, live, and be educated, as this is Women's History Month, let's make Georgia an authentic and inclusive state by creating a by creating a respectful and open world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That completes our time for morning orders today. If you want to be carried over till tomorrow, you need to see the messenger. House will remain at order. House will remain at order. Let me first of all advise members. We have a rather lengthy rules calendar today, which is why the people sent us here. So I'm going to ask for your cooperation so that we can move through the invite resolutions in an expeditious manner, get on to the rules calendar, and handle our business, because I sort of assume that some of our committees may meet today. Is that accurate? That's what I thought. Okay. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1354.
House Resolution 1354 by Representative Ballinger, the 23rd, a resolution recognizing and commending Victoria Hill, Miss Georgia 2019, and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cantrell for an invite resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I stand before you today to recognize one of Cherokee County's finest, a young lady that we're incredibly proud of, Victoria Hill. Victoria was Miss Georgia last year, and she has with her today her mom, Christine. Right here, let's welcome Christine, if you would. And then her two brothers and sister in the gallery, Daniel, Emily, and Jonathan. Grateful for them coming down today. Now, Miss Victoria participated in the Miss America pageant last fall, and she was first runner-up. If you watched the pageant, as I did, you know that she got ripped off. She should have won. It was obvious to everybody from Georgia. So today happens to be the 89th anniversary of National Anthem Day, the day that our country adopted the national anthem. So I'm going to ask Victoria to come, say a few brief words. She has been advocating for foster care, and then she's going to lead us in the national anthem. Y'all welcome Miss Victoria Hill, Miss Georgia.
Thank you. It is such an honor for me to be here. I am Miss Georgia Victoria Hill, and I've been traveling across the state and many others advocating for the needs of children in the foster care system. And I've been involved in working in the foster care system long before I was involved with the Miss America organization. I currently work at a group home for teen girls, and I've been raising awareness of the needs in the foster care system, recruiting businesses and organizations to serve, and creating mentorship programs across our state for youth aging out of the foster care program, because I realize that when you work in the foster care program, you are helping reduce the numbers in the homeless population, you are reducing the numbers in prisons, and you're helping people and generations of success and resources and so much potential that is not currently being invested into. So I thank you for advocating for youth in the foster care system and for all that you all do. So please stand with me as I sing our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1113.
House Resolution 1113 by Representative Metz, the 55th Smiley, the
Just a moment. This House will be in order. We still have other special guests to honor. Chair is going to ask that you take your seats and cease conversation. Gentlemen may proceed.
House Resolution 1113 by Representative Metz, the 55th Smiley, the 135th Williams, the 168th Thomas, the 56th Green, and the 151st and others. A resolution recognizing and commending Barbara Pace Hunt, Myra Payne Elliott, and Iris Mae Welsh, and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Representative Metz for an invite resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And trust me, everybody is smiling. I have 30 seconds, and I will live to that. I am so proud today to introduce Dr. Mari C. Daniels. Dr. Daniels researched, and the book is called Ground Crew, and it's on your desk, so it'll tell you about the ground crew and also about Dr. Daniels. But it's a factual written account of important historical information. And it tells us about 3 young ladies over 60 years ago who wanted to obtain a college degree. I now present Dr. Daniels.
Thank you very much, Representative Metz. To the Honorable Speaker and members of the House, I think I have 1 minute. Thank you for, thank this illustrious body for approving this resolution recognizing Barbara Hunt, Myra Elliott, and Iris Mae Welsh and their lawyers for their contributions that set the stage for the desegregation of public colleges and universities in the state of Georgia. On December 10th, 1964, in his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Every time I take a flight, I'm always mindful of the many people who make a successful journey possible, the known pilots and the unknown ground crew." We come today to celebrate this unknown ground crew who set the stage for the desegregation of public colleges and universities in the state of Georgia. Thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just briefly point out the daughters of one of the living legend. Here she is, the daughters, and they're also daughters up in the gallery. So we want to say thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you. Good job. Deacon and a Baptist, 1 minute is tough. Well, yeah, I do understand that, being a Baptist myself. Okay, all right. Well, you can
Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1293.
House Resolution 1293 by Representative Bonner, the 72nd, Mathiak, the 73rd, Singleton, and the 71st. Bazemore the 63rd, and Jackson the 64th, a resolution commending Bloom Our Youth, a licensed child welfare agency, and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Representative Bonner for an invite resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm joined by the members of the Fayette delegation this morning to recognize a great organization in Fayette County. Bloom is a private nonprofit foster care organization located in Fayetteville. They're celebrating their 30th anniversary. They recruit, support, and train our foster families who give displaced children hope and a home life for the next phase of their lives. They believe, as we do, that every child deserves the chance to be the best person that they were meant to be. I'm joined today by board members Norma Adams and Jack Middleton, their program director Pam Talley, and their executive director Becky Davenport, who's going to share a quick word.
Good morning. It is such an honor to be here this morning. Thank you, Representative Bonner and our illustrious speaker, for this resolution to recognize our work for over 30 years of supporting and sheltering and strengthening the lives of foster children all across the state of Georgia. Last year at the Bloom Closet, we served over 4,500 foster children from 90 Georgia counties. And it has been quite a journey over the past 30 years, and we're just so excited to be sharing it here with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Representative Wynn to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have the pleasure of introducing our Doctor of the Day, Dr. Stuart Siegerman. Dr. Stuart Siegerman attended medical school at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Medicine and completed his residency at Emory. He is double board certified in emergency medicine and pediatrics and serves Georgia's people from young to old at St. Joseph's Hospital. He is a member of and has served on the board of Georgia College Emergency Physicians since 1992. Welcome, Dr. Stuart Siegerman.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I just want to say I'm available at the clinic or any other time anybody has questions about health care or anything else. As I told the Senate, I have opinions on everything. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
We are going on to the rules calendar. Going on to the rules calendar, the clerk will read the caption to House Bill 829.
House Bill 829 by Representative Stevens, the 164th and Harrell of the 106th, to be titled an act to amend Code Section 4857 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the assessment of tangible property so as to provide for a local referendum to authorize assessment of residential homesteaded property. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Stevens to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, today I bring you House Bill 829, and it does something historic. Every year we get bombarded with our local constituents asking us, pleading with us, begging with us to cut their school taxes. And we do it. It's all across the board, and we do that through a local bill. Sometimes it's goods, and it's just, it's odd, to say the least. For the first time in Georgia's history, if you believe, as I believe, that this authority should lie within the school board, your local school system, if you'll vote for this bill and the following resolution, if you become 65 years of age and you live in your home, you have one single homestead, the school board themselves will be allowed to offer by local referendum to tax you at 1/2 the rate. Currently, all property is taxed at 40% of your value. This bill, if they so choose, not us, will be able to cut their taxes in half for senior citizens if they choose and if their budget allows it. Mr. Speaker, that's the essence of the bill, and I'll answer any questions if there are any.
You do not appear to have any questions.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 829 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 829, the ayes are 157, the nays are 6. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 962.
House Resolution 962 by Representative Stevens, the 164th, proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for local referendum to authorize assessment of residential homesteaded property. This resolution having been referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, that committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Stevens to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every year we talk about local control, local control. Well, if you'll press your green button today, you'll give the authority of your local school system to have local control. I'll answer any questions if there are any. If not, I'll ask for your favorable support.
Do not appear to have any questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the adoption of House Resolution 962. The ayes are 163, the nays are 5. This resolution, having been adopted by a margin of more than 2/3, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 888.
House Bill 888 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance so as to provide for certain consumer protections against surprise billing. This bill having referred to the Special Committee on Quality Health Care. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hawkins to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to bring House Bill 888, the Surprise Billing Consumer Protection Act. You know, one of the most leading causes of bankruptcy in this state and this nation are unknown surprise medical bills. These occur typically when a patient selects an in-network provider going to an in-network facility, but is later seen during that treatment by an out-of-network provider. Out-of-network provider means they do not have contracts with an insurance company. They do not have payment arrangements. They may not be paid anything at all, and the patient receives that surprise bill, often being in the tens of thousands of dollars. This legislation addresses this problem, and this body has addressed this problem for the last 5 years. This regulation begins by codifying certain terms like contracted amount as a medium in-network amount paid during 2017 for emergent and non-emergent services. This will be adjusted annually by the COS, which is the Commissioner of Insurance, and will not include Medicaid and Medicare rates. Another definition of importance, healthcare plans. These plans are qualified high deductible plans, medical hospital plans, HMOs, managed care, subscriber contracts, and the state health benefit plan. They do not include ERISA plans, CMO Medicaid plans, Medicare plans, and any other plans not described in the section. This bill also defines the term surprise bill, meaning a person that is covered and receives care from an out-of-network provider at an in-network facility. The bill is divided into sections, and I will go through some of these briefly. The first, Section 4, is emergent care. This is when the provider or the facility is in network or out of network, and they should be paid by the insurer without prior authorization or any retrospective payment denial for medically necessary services. The provider of the health care facility may only bill the patient the deductible, co-insurance, or co-insurance payments. The insurer will pay the greater amount of the verifiable contracted amount, which I already mentioned, the most recent verifiable amount agreed to by a provider who was in network and is now out of network. Provider payments will be subject to the prompt pay laws of this state, and insurers will notify the providers that this plan is an ERISA plan. The non-emergent section mirrors the emergent section with dealing with out-of-network providers. The next section is the patient freedom section, and this is one I was particularly interested in. This is that a patient can go to any doctor anywhere in this state, and whether that doctor is in network or out of network, as long as the patient understands that doctor is out of network, they may balance bill the patient. In other words, charge the patient beyond what the insurance company pays. This keeps the freedom of health care in the hands of the patient, and is a very good way, I still think, that medicine should be practiced. It also in this section has a section I was interested in, being a dentist, and that is if you go to an out-of-network provider and you have an emergency, well, not an emergency, but an immediate care need, like an abscessed tooth, I can refer you to another provider in endodontist that day and not have pre-certs and all the other things that may occur if that provider is in network. So it clears up a lot of the in-network and out-of-network obstacles for the patient. Now, we have been working on this bill, as you know, for many, many years. And some parts of this bill are very new compared to the last few years, and some parts of this bill is different than the bill they passed on the Senate side. Some of the additions we have made is not include Medicaid and Medicare rates in the computation of the contracted amount. That would reduce what our hospitals and what our physicians receive, making it almost impossible for them to practice, especially in the rural areas. An additional change that we made is that if you go to an out-of-network hospital, and often these are in our rural areas, they may be in network with one insurance company but not another, and you may be unlucky enough to be in the out-of-network category. That hospital, for emergency care, can also arbitrate the fee paid by the insurance company. That's very important because, again, under the rules of the arbitration, those amounts are identified and placed in code earlier in this section. Now, again, we have been fighting or discussing this bill for 5 years, and I want to recognize some folks, and I'm going to begin with the folks that truly came to the plate for the very reason to protect patients, and they are the insurers, the hospitals, and the physicians. They actually agreed to this legislation. But I also want to recognize some particular people that helped and worked on this diligently for the last 3 months. I'm talking about on Saturdays and Sundays, where I had conversations with many of the folks I'm about to name. And first, I'd like to recognize Senator Chuck Hufstetler for all his work over the years. Ryan Loke with the governor's office, very intelligent young man who worked very hard arranging this legislation in a flowing manner. Regina Quick, one of our House members who has a brilliant legal mind and kept us all in line. Vincent Wigan in Legislative Council. I talked to Vincent every Saturday and Sunday, I guess, for the last 2 months. And he did a wonderful job on this bill. Wonderful patience. But the main person I want to mention today is Chairman Richard Smith. This bill came about because of him. This bill has been accomplished because of him. And I would like to personally thank him for this legislation. He's been a great friend to me and a great friend to all of you and a great friend of the patients of Georgia. And I hope that you all will vote for this bill so when you go home you can look at your friends and your family and say, we together solve this problem, and you will no longer get a surprise bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If there are no questions, I'll resign the well.
You've got a couple of questions if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I will.
Chair recognizes Representative Shannon to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the representative yield?
I do.
So I appreciate that in this bill you're dealing with the emergency room services where it clearly states that patients will not be balanced bill for that. But the question I have is around lines 254 through 257, where the bill also talks about how if a patient goes through a process where they end up having a provider that is out of network, let's say, for example, if you get a colonoscopy and then the anesthesiologist that the hospital chooses or the doctor's office chooses is out of network, the patient would not be billed for more than what is their copay deductible, which in some cases, a deductible, as you mentioned before with the high deductible plans, could be like $7,500. So on the one hand, you're closing the door on people receiving really large bills, like $100,000 just being billed straight for whatever the anesthesiologist did, but at the same time, you're leaving the door open for people to get really high bills with, being billed up to the total amount their deductible. The
Right.
question I have is around lines 254 through 257. The bill also says that if the provider decides that the deductible that they are going to bill the patient for is not enough for the work that was provided, you could go into a situation of arbitration that could include the patient. Who pays the bill? And this is the question. Sorry it took so long
No,
to
it's
get
okay.
there,
It's
but
fine.
this is really important.
Sure.
Who pays the bill if a situation arises where the provider says, hey, the deductible amount is not enough, the doctor needs to receive more payment for the work that he or she has done, and so you go into a situation of arbitration. Whatever the result of that arbitration is, who pays that amount?
That arbitration is described in the arbitration piece later in this bill, and that will be between the provider and the insurer. And they will go through arbitration, through the commissioner's office, and it's a baseball arbitration where one side puts in an amount, the other side puts in an amount. If they can't agree within 30 days, arbitrator steps in and one amount's chosen. Now, you were earlier referring to Section 9. Section 9 was placed in the bill because of the out-of-network facility. So it references 3020E-4. That's the emergency section. So for emergencies, if you go to an out-of-network hospital, you can go through arbitration. For non-emergencies, you cannot do that. Typically, when you go to a in-network facility, you have the ability to ask that provider, is anyone else involved with this procedure? So we cannot, as far as providers, you still, will be covered. They cannot balance bill you for those behind them. But the facility can, an in-network facility is in contract, so they can bill you. And we could not include in-network facilities. Believe me, that thought crossed my mind, but that was enough to topple the whole bill.
Does the representative yield for an additional question?
Sure.
But again, back on lines 254 through 257, it says that a patient could be involved in that arbitration. And I just don't see anything in the bill that says that whatever the result of the arbitration
Okay.
that comes out of it, the bill is not going to go back to that patient.
No. What that section is speaking to is that the provider's ability to request arbitration, not the patient.
Right.
For a single patient, in other words, they're going to ask for arbitration for a single patient, single procedure, multiple procedures, multiple patients. It's describing what the provider can ask arbitration for. In none of those cases is the patient liable for any of this. This is only between the provider and the insurer.
Well, then why does line 254 say that a patient may be involved? I guess what I'm concerned about is that we're closing the door on surprise bills on one side, but it feels like we're opening it on another side because you're saying that the patient could be dragged into arbitration if the provider feels that they're not getting enough payment for their services, and there's nothing in the bill that says the patient can't then receive that bill, which is the result of arbitration, in addition to the fact that you've added that patients could be billed up to the amount of their deductible, which for some people is $7,500. It's less than $100, but it's also still enough to bankrupt somebody.
I understand your question, and the confusion is coming in. You're in the section of arbitration. This is between the provider and the insurer. The wording that you're referring to is only those cases that the provider is in arbitration with the insurer. In other words, a provider can go into arbitration with one patient's, challenging one patient's payment, what they paid, the insurer paid for that patient for one procedure, for multiple procedures, multiple patients, for multiple procedures. That's just delineating what the provider can bring arbitration. That is to avoid arbitration for the same patient, same procedure, or multiple patients for the same procedure, and you end up with 200 arbitrations that are involving only a few codes. This does not create a problem for the patient.
So just one final question, if
Okay.
I may.
Sure.
I understand what you're saying is that the lines 254 through 57 are talking about the events or the occurrences of what may have happened with one patient, so one patient situation. But what I'm asking is there's arbitration that's referenced a lot in this bill, and it's a
Right.
pretty long bill.
Right.
Nowhere in the bill does it say that the results of any of these arbitrations would not go back to
that individual patient. And
No,
that's what
it is referenced later in the bill. The arbitration is
where?
only between the insurer and the physician. And it says later in the arbitration that when the arbitrator makes that decision, the loser pays. That is the insurer or the provider. The patient's been taken out of this whole arbitration. They're not involved in the arbitration.
Can you just tell me where in the bill it says that? What lines?
Well, it says it multiple times, but at the very end of the bill, it says,
Because I see where the loser pays. I just don't see where there's a guard against that bill going back to the patient. That's what I
Okay.
don't see.
it says, again, one other reference to it's on 342. Once a request for arbitration has been filed with the Insurance Commission by a provider or facility under this chapter, neither such provider or facility nor the insurer in such a dispute will file a lawsuit in the court regarding the out-of-network claim. Over and over again, it talks about the provider and the insurer.
But that doesn't say...
It never goes back to the patient in the arbitration.
Yes, and I thank you for pointing out those lines. I'm just saying that it doesn't say that that bill can't go back to the patient. And I'm looking at what you just read, but that doesn't say anything about who could be responsible for the final bill.
Well, I don't know a way to put it to you. I apologize. But in many places in this, it says that the arbitration is between the provider and the insurance and is regulated under the Commissioners of Insurance and the arbitration.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Do you further yield?
Yeah, I guess. Maybe one more time. It's okay.
All right, I'm going to let you think on that for about 5 or 10 seconds.
Okay, then I won't. I'll sit down and let's vote. How's that?
Sounds like a voluntary decision on your part. Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 888 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Chairman Darlene Taylor rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Though I really like this bill, I feel like subject to House Rule 133, I must ask to be excused.
Lady has that right, and the journal will so reflect. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of House Bill 888, the ayes are 164, the nays are 4. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 789.
House Bill 789 by Representative Newton of the 123rd and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 20C of Title 33, the Official Code of Georgia annotated, relating to accurate provider directories, so as to provide for the creation of a surprise bill rating system based upon the number of certain physician specialty groups. This bill had been referred to the Special Committee on Quality Health Care. The committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Newton to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, this is a continuing national conversation on surprise medical bills, trying to prevent our citizens and our constituents from receiving those. By definition, the surprise medical bill is a surprise because someone often has picked an insurance plan because it covers the hospital that they or their family would like to use, or maybe if someone's purchasing for a group of employees for a company, they pick one that their employees want to be able to use. So imagine the surprise when someone, say with appendicitis, goes to one of this in-network hospital with an in-network surgeon, and then a few weeks later, after successful surgery, finds themselves receiving an out-of-network ER bill or an out-of-network radiology bill for the CT scan that diagnosed them, the out-of-network anesthesia bill for the person who put them to sleep, but more importantly, woke them up. What we're trying to prevent is the largest sources of surprise medical bills currently come from 4 specialties in our hospitals. Those are the ones where you can't look up our names. You can't find out who's the pathologist that looks at that specimen after surgery, or who's the anesthesiologist that's going to put you to sleep. You don't get to pick them, and you can't look up their name. So that leaves employers and people who are trying to purchase an insurance plan at a disadvantage, because when they purchased it, they maybe found their primary care doctor in the network, and they found the hospital that they or their family would like to go to was in that insurance plan's network. But unbeknownst to them, they didn't know the status of those 4 important specialties that are in a hospital and crucial to the care. That's anesthesia, emergency medicine, pathology, and radiology. And so then they find themselves weeks after surgery receiving a surprise bill. And if any of you have chosen one of the HMO plans that we have ourselves, if you chose one of the HMO plans and you look carefully, out-of-network bills are covered at 0%. The other plans are covered at 60 instead of 80%. So you could be responsible for the entire out-of-network bill for any of those 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those providers, and find yourself on the hook for thousands of dollars that you had no way, and neither did your employer. If they picked that plan for you that included that hospital, they had no way to tell that those 4 specialties were or were not in network. What the Surprise Bill Transparency Act does, House Bill 789, is it puts in place where the insurance department currently requires the insurance plans to list on their website the hospital name, the location, the telephone number, and any accreditations. It adds one thing called a surprise bill rating for this insurance plan in that hospital. That just means it's either 4 green checks or 4 red X's. That would mean that all those 4 specialties that are hospital-based, that you can't pick your provider, that they're either all in network under this health plan at that hospital, or if there's 4 red X's, it would mean that none of those specialties were in network at your in-network hospital. Basically, you're getting the building, but none of the doctors that work in it. Obviously, there could be a combination of 3 and 1 or 2 and 2, and that has to be explained. So this is a simple thing that adds to the current regulations that have to be updated every 30 days according to the current Department of Insurance. It adds a surprise bill rating. Whenever you look up your insurance plan, you find a hospital in network, you can look and see whether those specialties are in there. But more importantly, when you're picking an insurance plan, and we get the blessing of being able to choose from several different insurers in our state health benefits plan, but so do a lot of other people, and frankly a lot of HR individuals at large corporations. They have the luxury of choosing who will cover their ERISA plan, which are the federally regulated plans that we can't control. We can control the 13 to 15% that Chairman Hawkins was talking about, that are Georgians who have insurance plans that are controlled by the Department of Insurance here in Georgia. But over 60% of Georgians, of the ones who get their insurance through their employer, over 60% of them are an employer self-insurance plan. It's covered under ERISA at a federal level, and we can't tell that insurance company who to pay or how much to pay or who to have in network or who not to. But what we can do is utilize the fact that the network is almost always the same in the fully insured plans and in the ERISA plans, which are 60% of Georgians with employer insurance. So by utilizing that, by shining a light on it, by adding this surprise bill rating, when people are out there choosing plans, whether for a family of 6 like me or for 6 or 60,000 employees, they can look and see that when this plan says it has these hospitals in network, it tells them kind of the rest of the story. It also has these hospitals, but also the hospital-based physicians that are the source of most surprise bills. So that's where we're looking forward to moving. We're trying in Georgia to influence, to control the ones that we have control over through the Department of Insurance and House Bill 888. But what we're also trying to do is strongly influence by a bright spotlight transparency on these insurance plans that either you or your employer are paying over $14,000 a year on average for a family plan. So we have the opportunity in this State House between these two bills, and Chairman Smith and I have worked on this along with Chairman Hawkins and many others. We have a chance to go back to our constituents, as Chairman Hawkins said, and say that we did everything we could with the ones under our control, but not only that, we took a further step and did something for the ones that can only be controlled from Washington. We don't want to wait around on Washington to solve this, so we're going to go on and do everything that Georgia can do. And I hope you'll support the Surprise Bill Transparency Act. I'd be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Speaker.
You have a few.
Yes, sir.
Do you yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the Industry and Labor Committee, Chairman Werkheiser, to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mark, appreciate all your hard work on this. Isn't one of the benefits to this bill the fact that now some of these providers who were hesitant to work with doctors and insurance companies are now going to be even more willing and actually aggressively coming to the table, because everybody is going to want to have a 4-star rating?
It is a 4 green check rating. Stars was earlier, but it is 4 green checks. And yes, that is a feature of the bill. Really, is that everybody involved, the insurance company who have the finances and the patients, and then the hospital who wants the patients because they've built an infrastructure that's very valuable, and the providers that have these exclusive agreements at these hospitals, all of them are going to have an interest in being at the highest level rating to give the best care. And by doing so, we'll actually could eliminate the need for a complex agreement about what do you pay them when they're out of network. If we can shine a good enough spotlight on it to where people are afraid to bring to the market an insurance plan that only includes the building and not the doctors in it, and the doctors are afraid to be working at a hospital that doesn't have all 4 specialties in network, there'll be pressure on all those people involved, all 3. But the beauty is it takes the pressure off the patient.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes.
So I have a question. You mentioned emergency appendicitis earlier, so I'm just going to use that as an example. If I have emergency appendicitis and I call the ambulance and the ambulance takes me to the hospital, how exactly does this rating system help me, since I don't really get much of a choice of what hospital I go to? And we can use any emergency. I just use emergency appendicitis because that's what you mentioned.
2 things come into play. Number one, if you're in a fully insured plan that Georgia has control over, then House Bill 888 would take care of it for you. If you're in that 13 to 20%, that this bill, we can't control ERISA plans that are federally regulated from this building. So we can influence them, and what we hope is that your employer, or maybe you, if you were trying to decide which insurance plan among several to choose from, if you had that opportunity, you would be able to go before you purchase that insurance plan and find out, oh, well, look, it has these 3 hospitals, and this is the one I'd want to go to in an emergency, and look, it has 4 green checks, or it has a green check under emergency medicine, so you would know you would be protected. It ideally would be done at the time of purchase or at the time an employer is purchasing for a large number. At the moment of the emergency and all, there's some federal ACA rules that come in, Affordable Care Act rules that come into place that determine who can bill what on ERISA plans. And then we've solved, for the Georgia regulated plans, we've solved that with 888. So I hope that helps.
Do you further yield?
Sure.
So that makes a little sense to me. But for example, not every employer offers choices when it comes to their insurance. And there are also people, such as small business owners and others, who, when they're trying to make these choices, of course, they're going to probably want a 4-check hospital, but you have to take into account cost.
Right.
So I guess I'm wondering, how does this affect those people who don't have choices, or those people who are who maybe these 4-check system or 4-check providers are cost prohibitive?
The two questions there, but on the provision, you're right. A lot of employers just say this is the plan we have. but employers do listen to their employees, and they want to make sure. You may have a strong opinion about what hospitals you want in network, either for OB care or joint care or pediatric care. You may have a strong preference, and a lot of employees and employee groups communicate that to HR, especially if they didn't like last year's plan. They communicate and say, we want something better this year. And so maybe they change plans so it includes these 3 hospitals over here and not just these 2 over there. So the employers are already getting feedback from their employees because they want a plan that, well, they're using it themselves often, like I do with my group's plan, but they want their employees to be happy. They want them to have a plan that includes the hospitals that they want to go to. This just takes that one little step further and says, not only are we going to make sure that the building that my employees want to go to, if it's an HR or CEO making a decision, are the doctors and the providers inside that building also included? It gives them a little bit more information. As far as whether the price will go up or down, as we already mentioned, it's a 3-way negotiation where the hospital is going to want everybody in network, the doctors are going to have pressure to be in network, the insurance wants to sell a plan that looks like the plan we always thought we were getting. We always thought when we got a hospital, we got the doctors who worked in it too. That's why I call it a surprise bill. It comes out of nowhere and nobody could anticipate it. So that's the problem we're looking to solve. I think it will take, as it goes into, this plan will go into effect, if signed by the governor, go into effect in October, which is right before open enrollment. We want to put a spotlight on the plans that are being offered. It gives some time for everybody to negotiate to where all the hospitals that are in a plans network would be 4 green checks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker, I'll yield the will at this time and let us get on with other important business. But I appreciate your support on the Surprise Bill Transparency Act.
Gentleman has yielded the will. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Bill 789? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 789. The ayes are 170, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 957.
House Bill 957 by Representative Jones, the 47th, Jaspers, the 11th, Chokers, the 138th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Title 20, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to education generally, so as to provide that certain charter school employees shall be included in the health insurance fund for public school teachers. This bill having referred to the Committee on Education, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes the Speaker Pro Tem to present the bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 957 contains 5 revisions to current charter school law that were brought to me by the Department of Audits the State Charter School Commission or locally approved charter schools, and it does not contain significant changes to current policy. The first one just clarifies that state charter school teachers are eligible to participate in the state health benefit plan. They do currently, and the AG has continually affirmed that. They, as an aside, they do pay into the state teachers' retirement pension fund as well. But it adds Article 31A to the section of a code that affirms that public school teachers that work at charter schools are eligible for the state health benefit plan. Section number 2 adds back into code a provision that was inadvertently omitted last year in other legislation that allows charter schools, and it's primarily locally approved charter schools, to establish residency at the time of application. Section 3 extends the terms of the State Charter School Commission from 2 years to 4 years, and it staggers their terms. Section 4 makes it clear that student records are the property of a state charter school, and when they close, those records eventually go back to the State Charter School Commission. And finally, Section 5 shifts the deadline for a required virtual school performance audit from December 1 to April 1, so as to incorporate up-to-date academic data. That's what the bill does, and I'd be happy to yield for questions.
You have no questions.
Well, thank you, and I would appreciate your favorable consideration of House Bill 957.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 957 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 957, the ayes are 165, the nays are 4. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. This House will come to order. It had been the chair's intention to not call House Bill 966 until later in the calendar, but due to popular demand, and the curiosity that is killing the chair, because I understand I missed one of the greatest committee meetings ever held in Capitol Hill. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 966.
House Bill 966 by Representative Burchett of the 176th, Corbett of the 174th, Burkle of the 155th, McCall of the 33rd, and others. To be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 and Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to forest resources and other plant life, so as to regulate the harvest and sale of palmetto berries. This bill having referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Burchett to present the bill. Please, members of the House, will please give attention to the member in the well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Esteemed colleagues, I come to you today to talk about a very serious issue we face in South Georgia. The problem that we're trying to rectify with this bill is that we have a bush in South Georgia called a palmetto bush. And on these personal properties and state properties, what's happening is busloads of harvesters are being dropped off under the cover of darkness and harvesting these berries to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars and illegally selling them south of the border in Florida. So what this bill is intended to do is make it easier for law enforcement to do their job and enforce the law and crack down on some of this illegal harvest. What it does, it sets up a certificate of harvest, and it's a very simple and low threshold. What a harvester would do would go to a landowner and say, I'd like to harvest the berries on your property, and the certificate would essentially be the landowner given name, address, information, and signing over the permission to the harvester to allow them to be on their property to harvest those berries. The harvester would keep this certificate throughout the process of harvesting, transporting, and selling these berries. Therefore, allowing law enforcement the opportunity to, in the event they stop some of these harvesters with berries, to verify that these are legal berries and they can be sold here in the state of Georgia. The problem has been exacerbated most recently because Florida has passed some legislation to regulate this berry in South Georgia. In North Florida, and so most of these folks are coming north of the border to come and collect these berries on both personal property and state property. Essentially, that's what the bill does, and I will yield for questions.
Well, you have a few, but of course what you don't know is the chair had appointed a committee, after committee, to prepare prepare this bill to come on the floor. So I'm going to recognize Representative Momtahan for the first question.
Representative Burchett, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Burchett, I understand this to be your first bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, congratulations on your first bill and taking on such a hard one. I do have a question. So after these criminals steal these berries, must they be used immediately, or is there a point where they, just get too old to be used anymore?
That's a good question. I appreciate the gentleman bringing that question. I don't participate in the berry production myself, so I don't know the answer to that, but it would just essentially allow them to pick those berries and give them that certificate so that they can legally have those berries in possession when they take them to sale.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative, I don't think this is a problem where he lives, but Representative Ridley for a question to your right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To my friend in the well, I'm not even going to ask you to yield because I'm afraid you'll say no, so I'm just going to go ahead with my question. Could you kind of describe why these berries are so valuable and what the medical use is for these?
As I understand it, these berries have a medicinal value for the male prostate.
Okay. So, one more question, I guess, leading off of that. Could you dictate to us the stiffness of the penalties that you put in this bill?
Yes, sir. These penalties they align with the rest of the criminal code in that if you get caught without this certificate, then you will be charged with a misdemeanor unless the berries are in value greater than $1,500, in which you'd be prosecuted for a felony. Excuse me.
All right.
I've lost all train of thought.
Yeah, that sort of happens sometimes when that happens. But anyway, I don't have any other questions. I think there's a few others in here that like to take a poke at this.
Chair recognizes the Speaker Pro Tem to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do.
Is it not true that you solicited my strong support and sympathy for this issue and for not only yourself, since you, in fact, grow these berries, but for many of your constituents and other folks in South Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it also true, if the gentleman further yields,
Yes.
that not once in your rather long-winded and thorough explanation of why this bill was so important did you ever once indicate the purpose of salt palmetto berries?
I believe the gentlelady knows what she speaks.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes this issue is spreading all across the state. Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
The gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
I'll be very honest with you. I plead complete ignorance. And after talking to some people, I own a lot of palmetto. And I often wondered, and maybe you could help me, I thought they were supplementing their Social Security why so many old men were picking my berries.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Gentleman, further yield.
Yes, sir.
I just did not expect someone as young and on his first bill to be so concerned about this issue.
Fair point.
I will conclude by saying, sir, when you come back, when you lose some of your hair like me and I'm still here and you're grayer, I think you'll have a different feeling and you can take that down because folk will knock you out for that bottle.
Let's see.
I yield to Will.
Representative, I think that's more than yielding. I think that is running from the well. All right. House will be in order. What purpose does Chairman McCall rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State
Speaker.
your inquiry.
Is it not true that every day when we wake up, we need to try to learn something new? And I had no idea that palmetto bushes had berries on them. And it was an interesting Ag Committee meeting. But what sealed the deal on the importance of how we need to take care of the palmetto berry business in the state is when Representative LaRicchia told me that his wife makes him a palmetto berry smoothie about once a week. And that we furthermore need to vote for this bill. Thank you, sir.
What purpose does Representative Cannon rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that the sponsor did not speak to the process of getting the certificate before you're facing a misdemeanor or a felony?
Could you repeat that?
Is it not true that the bill sponsor did not speak to the process for getting the certificate before you're facing the misdemeanor?
If the lady so states. We have some others. What purpose does Representative Henson rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it true that if this can result in a felony, and is it not true that that would remain on someone's record? Therefore, if it was someone young, a teenager, this could be on his record forever that he has a felony. And further, is it not true that this is a pretty strict punishment for something like picking palmetto berries?
Well, I mean, that's what everyone has to determine for themselves. You have the bill, you can read the bill. A felony, unless expunged in some fashion, would stay on one's record. What purpose does Representative Jasmine Clark rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that this bill does not outline how many berries have to be stolen in order for this to be a felony?
Once again, every member can read the bill and answer those kind of questions without doing parliamentary inquiries. What purpose does Representative Momtahan rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that the representative spoke and he rose upright to speak about this issue in full?
If the gentleman believes that to be true, I'm sure it probably is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. This is a very serious matter. Chair's going to ask the clerk, before we vote, to read House Bill 133.
House Rule 133, when the question is put, every member within the chamber shall vote unless the member is immediately and particularly interested therein, or unless the member is excused by the House. A motion by the member to be excused from voting must be made before the House divides or before the calls of the yeas and nays is commenced, and it shall be decided without debate. The member making the motion may briefly state the reason why it should prevail. In every case where the seat of a member is being contested, the sitting member and the contestant shall both retire from the House before the vote is taken.
This House will avoid conflicts of interest at all measure. Now, is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 966 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 966, the ayes are 125, the nays are 42. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 830.
House Bill 830 by Representative Benton of the 31st to be titled an act to amend Code Section 47-20-87 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to eligible large retirement systems authorized to invest in certain alternative investments. This bill had referred to the Committee on Retirement. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Benton to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I come before you today to present House Bill 830. House Bill 830 is a bill that would allow eligible large retirement systems to increase their alternative investment from 5% to 10%. And I want to read to you what is considered to be a eligible large retirement system.
any retirement system created by this title, which has an accumulated unfunded actuarial accrued value not greater than 25%. The Georgia Municipal Employee Benefit System. Any public retirement system other than a retirement system defined in any of the other paragraphs. The retirement system has an accumulated unfunded actuarial liability not greater than 25% of the total of its assets. Any public retirement system which has more than $200 million in assets. This is a bill that would allow these retirement systems to up their investment in alternative investment. This is something that a lot of these retirement systems are asking for, and this bill would do that. The eligible part of the bill, at the time this bill was written, teacher retirement system was not part of was not an eligible retirement system. Employee retirement, firefighters pension fund, those were two of the larger ones that were able to do this. I do want to point out that the earnings from two of these have been very well. The firefighters pension fund has been able to do 10% since 2012. Right now, their fund that they are using is running at about 16%, and has been a very good return. The employee retirement system, although they have not been in it very long, is running better than their stock investments. Mr. Speaker, that's the bill. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anyone has one.
You do not have any questions.
One other statement I wanted to make is that right now teachers' retirement is not part of this, but the Senate passed a bill the other day that would allow them to do 5%. With this bill, it would raise it to 10%. We are in negotiations with teacher retirement on this, but I would appreciate a yes vote on this bill so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 830 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 830, the ayes are 156, the nays are 12. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 932.
House Bill 932 by Representative Gaines, the 117th, Cooper, the 43rd, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 14 and Chapter 35 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to professional corporations and the Georgia Podiatry Practice Act. This bill had been referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Gaines to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I bring House Bill 932. This legislation allows podiatrists and physicians to organize and jointly own a professional corporation. As an example, a podiatrist and a primary care doc may find that they could operate a professional corporation more efficiently together, potentially encouraging their location in rural Georgia and other places across this state. For podiatrists and doctors who use this opportunity to perform a professional corporation, they will make their operations more convenient for patients. Patients will be able to follow up with specialty care in the office just down the hall rather than being referred across town or otherwise. And in the same respect, diabetic patients visiting a podiatrist will be able to see and be diagnosed by a primary care physician. It's a win-win for patients and for the podiatrist and physicians. I'll close with this from a Duke University study. Using a multidisciplinary team approach most effectively prevents complications from diabetes and reduces the risk of amputations. This legislation provides one more opportunity for physicians and podiatrists to effectively treat patients and makes it easier on patients when seeking their care. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to answer any questions.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I will.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I will.
Similar to the question I asked about the chiropractor bill, and since surprise billing has been the subject of the day, how will this affect patients when it comes to being billed by their insurance, since they would be effectively seeing two different types of two people but in the same office visit?
Sure. This would not have any changes as they're currently if they were going to a podiatrist and a physician separately. It doesn't change scope of practice. All it allows is for the podiatrist and physician to organize jointly, professional corporation.
Does the gentleman further yield?
Sure. For
so
one more
will they
question.
get two bills, one from the doctor and one
They
from
would.
the podiatrist? All right.
As
Thank you.
I understand, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 932 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 932, the ayes are 167, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 755.
House Bill 755 by Representative Belton of the 112th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 2068.1 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to charter school funding so as to provide that local boards of education shall provide local charter schools with itemized allotment sheets for the upcoming fiscal year. This bill having referred to the Committee on Education. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Belton to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This body should be very, very proud that due to a law y'all passed a few years ago, Georgia, along with Texas, are the two most fiscally transparent states in the union in terms of schools and school boards. So I appreciate y'all doing that. This bill just expands that, in particular to charter schools. As you know, charter schools are different than traditional schools. They need have a charter contract that includes a lot of financial accountability metrics that they have to deal with, and then unfortunately they're not getting the information they need. This bill is not punitive to the school boards because the data is already there. It doesn't cost them anything. We just want them to post it. I also want to thank Representative Michael Smith for adding a section in this bill in order to not to burden the rules chairman too much, as a lot of education bills. We added some language about school choice transfers within the district for schools as well. And I also want to thank Representative Stovall for the nice letter she wrote about this particular need for this particular bill. And I yield for questions.
You do not have any questions.
Now I yield the will.
The gentleman has yielded the will. The chair recognizes Representative Stovall to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks and appreciation to Chairman Belton for bringing this bill. Members, I rise for your support of House Bill 755 because it is the right thing to do. How many of you all find it difficult to stick with the budget? Just imagine what would happen if you did a budget not knowing your actual earnings. Some expenses would get paid while others would not. Wouldn't you like to have the peace of mind of the amount you will receive? This is the struggle many of our charter schools are facing across Georgia. The allotment sheets give the schools an exact amount for funding for each student based on his or her category. Without those allotment sheets, the charter schools and our children are getting shortchanged. The school districts have been funding the charters for the basic QBE, which is the quality basic education allocation, and not actually what they're supposed to earn. The charter schools are already underfunded, so not having an accurate funding amount exacerbates the struggle even more. Many of you have heard me talk about Seven Pillars Career Academy in Clayton County. On your desk, as Chairman Belton referenced, is a letter from Ms. Christina Ginn, who's the head of school at Seven Pillars, explaining the school's personal experience and the unnecessary struggle. This school has over 20% of their population developmental disability, and close to 50% have identified for the remediation program. Both populations garner a higher rate than the basic QBE that they're receiving now. Seven Pillars is still expected to provide costly services for those students to meet their legal obligations, medical obligations, and wraparound services. All line items in the budget are affected when the allotment sheet is not obtained in a timely manner. For example, non-student services such as school nursing, nutrition, state health benefit contribution, and other areas that the DOE funds. These constraints have resulted in the release of staff, a decrease in services, and other cuts that weaken the culture and climate at the school. The schools can't guarantee accuracy of their earned funds when they don't know what those funds are. The full-time equivalency, known as the FTE, is calculated twice a year in October and March. The March count of all the students present at schools would have already been done in order to generate the allotment sheet. The school districts are dispersed a dollar amount equaling the number of students and categories, which are the students that are enrolled. If that number of actual enrollment is lower and the districts receive the money on a higher estimate, the districts are not required to return their excess money. They are held harmless, in other words. The districts which receive an overpayment will get to keep the money. But if the charter schools receive an amount higher than the original projections, the district takes that money from the charter and doesn't hold them harmless like the state DOE does to them. So I'm asking for your favorable consideration on House Bill 755, and I'll yield for any questions, Mr. Speaker.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 755 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 755. The ayes are 163. The nays are 4. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Andy Welch for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute of H.R. 164 as amended by the House.
Chairman Welch has moved that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Resolution 164 as amended by the House. It is Amendment AM 340808. Clerk will read the caption.
House Resolution 164 by Representative Powell, the 171st, Williamson, the 115th, Welch, the 110th, and others, proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for the dedication of revenues derived from fees or taxes to the public purpose.
Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to explain his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, you will recall that last year you passed out House Resolution 164 presented to you by our dearly departed Chairman Jay Powell. This was his measure, his fee dedication constitutional amendment, and it was passed by this House unanimously with bipartisan support, both in the sponsorship of the measure and by your votes. That has gone to the Senate. The Senate has proposed a substitute, which they have sent to you, which is on your desk. The Senate substitute removed the core parts of the measure, leaving it only to apply to the Solid Waste Trust Fund and the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund. The House amendment that you have before you restores the expanse of the amendment that you passed before that was Chairman Jay Powell's bill. This would allow for the dedication of taxes and fees for their intended purpose with a cap on the amount that can be done, so at a 1% of the state budget. It does integrate a concept that the Senate did put in their substitute. As an offer of compromise in this process, we did include the executive branch's authority that under a physical emergency, the executive branch could suspend the dedication of those fees while we're not in session. When we return to session, however, the constitutional amendment would require us to act, either do nothing or agree with the executive branch's decision as to the reallocation of those fees. Remember, this also sets a timeline. This is, I think, a true middle ground in terms of the appropriation process when we dedicate fees. Currently, if you want to dedicate fees or taxes, you have to pass a constitutional amendment and the voters will vote on that. That money is then locked aside. It cannot be touched by the General Assembly. It cannot be reappropriated. This measure allows us as a General Assembly to act as appropriators with respect to the dedication and limit the duration in which those fees may be dedicated for a year or up to 10 years. It sets that cap that we've talked about before at a 1%, and it also recognizes that in cases of fiscal emergency of the state, either the executive branch or the General Assembly may take action to rededicate those fees or suspend the dedication of those fees so that we can get through a hard time should we have one. With that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I would like just to remind everyone that this measure has been one that we've worked on for many, many years. It would bring a level of accountability back to those fees, and it would bring back truth in taxation and truth in fee dedication. And I would ask for your favorable support of that. I will say this, that it was several years ago that Chairman Powell undertook this endeavor when he actually asked me to amend one of his bills while he was in the hospital with his daughter Jessica. And he asked me to make the same motion as to one of his bills, and that bill was a fee rollback bill. And you may recall that I think it was back in 2012, 2013, where it actually rolled back the fee if we didn't appropriate it. And we amended the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund or the Solid Waste Trust Fund with that rollback. And we sent it back to the Senate. Since that time, we've been working on this constitutional amendment, and I would ask that you join me again in a favorable and unanimous adoption of this measure. And one last point before I take questions, I'll note that today is March the 3rd. March the 3rd is a very important day to me and my family because it happens to be my birthday. So if you would do me the pleasure, I know you all can't light up candles for me. It burned the house down at my age. But if you could, I wouldn't mind it if you just bring out a blaze of green glory on the board over there and in recognition of such a fine birthday. But I'll take questions at this time, Mr. Speaker.
Shameless. You have a couple of questions. Do you yield?
I do, yes, sir. I do, yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Williamson to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman
Yes,
yield?
I do. Yes, sir, I do.
I appreciate your hard work on this measure, and I have one simple question.
Yes.
Would Chairman J. Powell approve of this amendment?
I believe he would, yes, sir, and I know that he would because you as a co-sponsor, the second signer of the resolution, you have endorsed this as well, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for the good work.
Thank you. I yield further questions, Mr. Speaker.
You have no further questions.
With that, I ask for your favorable consideration, and I hope you'll wish me a happy birthday.
Chair will read clerk will read the caption to the amendment.
Amend the Senate substitute to H.R. 164, LC 345570S by deleting all matters from lines 1 through the end and inserting in lieu thereof the following.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the House Amendment AM 340808? Chair hears none, and the House Amendment is adopted. On the gentleman's motion that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Resolution 164 as amended by this House, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 164, the nays are 4. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Resolution 164 as amended by this House. Chair recognizes Representative Reeves, the governor's floor leader, for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 444.
Representative Reeves has moved that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 444. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 444 by Representative Reeves, the 34th lot of the 122nd, Rogers the 10th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to education so as to revise the Move On When Ready Act.
Chair recognizes Representative Reeves to explain the Senate substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The first thing that I want to say, I know there's a lot of confusion both today and yesterday. You have two bills that have been put on your desk, and one of them has the tan first page, and this is the bill from last year, and so we can disregard this. This is not what we're voting on here today. We're voting on the Senate substitute. A lot of work has gone into this issue. To refresh you, last year the House passed a version of House Bill 444, and when we got to the Senate, we realized that we needed to take a step backwards and take a harder look at things and bring this issue back up this year. And that's exactly what we did, and there was a tremendous amount of work that took place over the summer and fall with all the stakeholders and in crafting the fairest way to resolve this issue in light of the fact of the budget item growing from 23 million to what could be between 125 and 145 million for next year. This came, I'm holding in my hand an audit that was from January of 2018. So this is 2 years and 2 months old. This is an audit of the dual enrollment program. And this audit identified over 2 years ago that controls needed to be put in place in this program. As the program was amended in 2015, essentially the ceiling was and the walls were taken off of it. And it's been the highest, fastest growing budget item in our state since then. So this came out over 2 years ago. This was out before anybody was even, before the parties had even nominated their nominee for governor through the primary. That's how long this conversation has been going. And since this came out, a lot of the warnings in here have manifested exactly as projected, and the program has continued to grow. I want to walk through the bill, House Bill 444, which is the Senate sub that is on your desk. So first thing I'm going to talk about before I talk about grandfathered students is moving forward. So students who have yet to dual enroll in high school or who have yet to be of the age of eligibility, moving forward, if they are dual enrolling for purposes of university system courses, they will be subject to a 30-hour cap. The state is going to pay for 30 hours of credit. And beyond that, they are eligible to dual enroll all they want, either to pay for out of pocket, or if their school system so pleases, then the school system can use the FTE money they receive for that student to pay for them to dual enroll above 30 hours. They're going to be limited to core courses, and this was frankly, I got very little pushback on this. There's over 2,500 core courses that are available, and I think this is just common sense. Our core courses are the courses that are most likely to transfer and be accepted and to receive that college credit for. And the program is going to be limited to 11th and 12th graders moving forward, with the exception of if the student is a 10th grade student and they've otherwise qualified for the Zell Miller Scholarship, which it requires a certain ACT, SAT, and a score and a GPA. And there are a significant number of students in our state that do qualify for that at the end of their freshman year. They would be eligible to dual enroll their 10th grade year. So now I'm going to talk about how this bill is going to treat technical students, TCSG, Technical College System of Georgia students. So we're moving on from university to technical schools now. Technical schools are also going to be subject to the 30-hour cap. And their limitation in courses is going to be to what we call the CTAE courses, which is Career, Technology, Agriculture, and Education. There are over 4,500 CTAE courses, so again, no shortage there. For TCSG students will be allowed to dual enroll their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade years. There's something very important, a caveat that I need to talk about, I need to explain to you. Part of what of the rationale with the growth of the program from 2015 and the state's investment in that has been dedicated and related to our vocational and technical students for the purpose of preparing Georgia students to be workforce ready by the time that they graduate high school. That was a major focus back in 2015, and this body has continued to make investments in that program and in that concept since then. And so what's very important to understand is that this bill does not stop or interfere with that idea. So as I mentioned, technical students will be allowed to take 30 hours of state-paid dual enrollment. However, if they are what is referred to as an SB2 student or an Option B student, which is a contractual agreement that a student makes with the state themselves and their high school that allows them to replace some of the high school credits that most students take in order to be eligible to graduate. They can take vocational technical classes instead. That's an SB2 student. Or students that are in the technical programs that are enrolled in one of what we call the 17 high demand career initiative programs. So there are 17 programs. In fact, here they are: automotive, aviation, certified engineer assistant, commercial truck driving, computer programming, computer technology, construction, diesel equipment technology, early childhood care and education, electrical line worker, health science, industrial maintenance, logistics, movie production set design, practical nursing, precision manufacturing, and welding and joining technology. These are careers where we have a workforce need in Georgia. And there are opportunities at our technical schools for students to take to engage in these programs and earn, number one, a certification, number two, a diploma, and in some cases, number three, an associate's degree in these 17 fields. And if they are in one of those 17 fields, which these are just umbrella fields, there's multiple programs underneath each of these 17 categories. If they are in one of those, or if they are an SB2 student, then they will be eligible to use 30 hours of their HOPE grant to apply to that. So they will have 30 hours of dual enrollment, state paid, and then 30 hours of HOPE grant in one of these 17 programs. That's a total of 60 hours. And with that 60 hours, you can earn every certificate and every diploma in the state, and in most cases, an associate's degree. This is a very key part of this bill, y'all. We are not abandoning our investment in workforce development. This part of this program is what is so popular, especially in rural Georgia. And this effort will continue, and students will have these opportunities under this new bill. We're continuing that investment. So now I'm going to switch gears to talk about the grandfathered students, okay? I know you've probably gotten a few emails. I think I've probably responded to emails from just about everybody's constituents in this room right now. Here is how the grandfathering process is going to work under the new bill. Right now, in technical schools, if we're in the technical college system of Georgia, current SB2 students or students that are in the high demand career initiative programs receive unlimited hours. There is no cap, okay? The students that are in those programs now, they're not subject to the 30 hours of dual enrollment and then the 30 hours of Hope Grant. They are receiving unlimited hours. And then moving over to USG, university students, if they have more than 18 hours, and whether that number is 19 or whether it's 30 or 40 or 50 hours, no matter how many hours they have, they receive 12 more hours next year. So for a lot of, some of you have heard from constituents who have students right now who are juniors, who are current juniors, and they have more than 18 hours. They will receive essentially a semester of paid for dual enrollment by the state next year. But there's options. So, well, what about after that? Well, there's options here. Number one, if they're able to, they can pay out of pocket to finish. If they want that one last semester to dual enroll, they can also petition their school to pay for it. And there are school systems around the state that are going to do this. They're going to take some of that money that they're receiving for what is in some cases an empty seat in their classrooms and in their schools, and use some of that money to allow that student to finish their dual enrollment. And they also, many would have the option to graduate early. High school students graduate at the end of their fall semester often, all the time. And if staying in the college level program is that it's that important, they can arrange to graduate high school early, and then thus, as a high school graduate, they're eligible for the Hope Scholarship and can enroll in USG full-time and become a college student. Let me talk really quick about some data. The average public school student in the state of Georgia that dual enrolls takes 17 hours. That's the average. So our bill, House Bill 444, is offering 30 hours of state paid for credit. That's almost twice what the average is. Of that average, of that 17 hours, 64% of the current 52,050 students that are in dual enrollment, 64% or 33,163 are taking below the 17 hours, and only 36% or 18,887 are currently above 17 hours. Now let me go a little bit deeper. 30 hours of the 52,050 students right now, 6,397 are above 30 hours currently, and 4,709 of those are seniors, which essentially leaves the population of juniors, which are the seniors won't be affected by this bill because they're about to graduate. So about 1,600 juniors are already above, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen are above the 30 hours. They are going to receive 12 more hours of state paid for, and then beyond that, there will be opportunities for them to dual enroll either on their own or with the help from their school. But what's important, and I say this so we understand, when I say that the average is 17 hours, the majority of these students are on the lower end of that average. They take less than 17 hours. The mode, which is the most frequently occurring number of classes, most students dual enroll actually take 2 classes. Again, the numbers are on the low end, which means that this bill and these changes are not going to impact the majority of the students that dual enroll. I know that a lot of you have discussed the Hope Scholarship and why can't we use the Hope Scholarship. And it's very simple. Here's a copy of the Georgia Constitution. There is language in the Constitution that says we cannot use the Hope Scholarship to supplant current existing programs or replace. And so we cannot use Hope Scholarship money to pay for somebody's dual enrollment because it would be supplanting an existing state program called dual enrollment. The independent colleges, Maureen Downey with the AJC a few weeks ago wrote a story. She quoted Susanna Baxter, who wrote about, and this is online, about the Atlanta Journal-Constitution wrote about how if this bill fails, essentially, the changes that this could bring to our independent colleges could be devastating. One of the likely things that may happen if the bill fails is that the student finance is going to cut the rates that it pays the schools, including our private independent schools, which are prevalent throughout, especially our rural communities. A lot of our rural students that dual enroll, they do it through independent private schools. And if those rates are cut, then they, in all likelihood, may not be able to offer as much, and that opportunity goes away. There's been a lot of misinformation about this bill. In the Senate side, we heard about how there was no data. No data, we have no data on this. Well, we do. There's 61.8% of the students that dual enroll are female. 44% of the students that dual enroll are minority. In poverty, 27.8% of the students in dual enrollment are in high poverty, and 19.3% are what is considered low poverty by TAMF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. And what's important about House Bill 444, y'all, and this is what I'm really getting at here, is that House Bill 444 is the plan, the way that we put this program together. We achieve what its goals are, and its goal was never to replace high school with college. That was never the goal of this program. The goal of this program was to allow students to get a jump start. And by doing this, and by the way we have constructed House Bill 444 is inclusive. It allows all of our students across the state the opportunity to dual enroll. Everyone that wants to will have an opportunity to take those 30 hours. You know, this is qualifying week, and it's symbolic of a lot of things because there's politics and there's governing. And there's a difference, as we all know. Anybody who's sat in this room, some folks in this room have only been here for a few weeks. There's politics and there's governing. And we can find easy political points in a whole lot of things we do up here. And we can vote no in protest and take some easy political points here. We can do that. But I want to ask everybody in this room to recognize something. When we press our green button or our red button, if you hit your green button, you're voting for a program that's inclusive, a program that's going to give every student the chance to take advantage of this program if they want to. And if you hit the red button, this program will be capped. This program will be capped around $100 million. And Student Finance, the Office of Student Finance, is going to have to figure out how to run this program in that capped budget. And what that means is that in all likelihood, a line's going to be drawn, and not every student's going to get to dual enroll. Now, whether that's by means testing, by lottery, or first come, first serve, I don't know. But we will certainly lose control of that in this body, and it will be up to them. But what we can do in this body right now is by hitting our green button and voting yes, every single one of the kids in our district will get the chance to take those 30 hours of state-paid dual enrollment. That is what this program was intended for. It was not intended to replace. So, Mr. Speaker, I will certainly take questions.
So you have, looks like about 13 or 14 questions.
Whatever your pleasure is.
No, it's yours. I mean, you can yield or not yield. Do you yield?
I feel that I need to at least take a question or two because in transparency and the magnitude of this and the work that's gone into this, I'm certainly not afraid. I'm willing to take a few questions.
Chair recognizes Chairman Setzler to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
I want to clarify a couple things. I want to ask a question for folks who are thinking maybe they should vote no on this. Did I hear you say that 68% of the people that are enrolled in dual enrollment right now are females in Georgia?
61.8.
61.8, and 44% of minorities?
That's right.
You know, as I think about this, this General Assembly acted a few years back to preserve Hope Scholarship, to keep it so that it wouldn't become less accessible to students by making some smart, thoughtful controls on it, which is what I understand you're trying to do here. Isn't it true the dollars that fund this dual enrollment program come from our QBE funding formula?
Yes.
So the money we're talking about here is a QBE formula, which funds our entire statewide school system. Now, isn't it true under the current dual enrollment program versus, say, another program, if you take an AP class in your high school, the QBE formula funds you for one class. But under dual enrollment, isn't it true that both the high school gets funded and the college gets funded for broadening the class?
Yes, and let me go back and correct something that I said. This is an appropriated program. The schools receive QBE funding, the colleges receive funding, but the money that is used to pay for the dual enrollment credit hours is an appropriated amount of money that we do in this body.
Right, and I asked the question because the program is as popular as it's been in providing access to kids who may not have a lot of AP classes in their schools. We are funding an extra amount of money out of QBE to prop this program up and keep it going in an unlimited fashion, are we not?
That's right.
So what we're saying here is that kids can take 30 hours of college credit in high school in this, and can continue to in this double-funded program, which is good for their school system and good for the college they're taking classes from. But we can't continue in an unlimited way to keep propping that up, isn't it true?
Yes, and with the 30 hours plus the 127 hours of Hope Scholarship, state, even under the bill, is offering 157 hours of free college courses, which is one of the most generous programs in the country.
So that, one last question for you, so that out of the 52,000 students, 45,000 of those are taking less than 30 hours. Is that not true by your numbers?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, sir. So I say this to our members, if they're thinking about voting no on this, this is a way to keep this great program functioning and not come unglued to the hinges with the runaway cost here, so we can protect it, not hurt it. Is that not what you're doing with this?
Absolutely.
So I would just close. I appreciate your answering my questions. I just would ask members to think about that because of what we're doing with this, if we support this program and support the recognition of how generous it is, a no vote would be turning our back on the long-term viability of the program. Isn't that true?
That's right. Thank you, Chairman. And Mr. Speaker, I am aware of the vibe of the room right now, and the eyes staring at me. And I'm willing to answer questions, but I believe that everybody in here is ready for me to yield the well. And I will do so.
A smart man. On the gentleman's motion that this House agree to the Senate substitute to House Bill 444, all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Lopez Romero rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that as of fiscal year 2020, dual enrollment represents less than 2% of our total K through 12 and higher education spending? So this is not a runaway program?
If the lady so states.
An additional parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker?
I've got others. I'm going to have to move on if we're going to have any more.
Thank you, Mr.
What
Speaker.
purpose does Representative Jasmine Clark rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State your
Speaker.
inquiry.
Is it not true that the sponsor of this bill spoke about the average number of students only taking 17 hours, and therefore, if the majority of the students are not actually using up the funds, then this does not actually fix the problem of cost, since only a small percentage of people are actually taking more than 30 hours?
I'm sure she believes that to be true.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right. All those in favor of the bill are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the gentleman's motion, the ayes are 103, the nays are 67. This House has agreed to the Senate substitute to House Bill 444. What purpose does Chairman Powell rise?
To be recognized for a motion.
Please state your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully ask that the rules of this House be suspended so that the bill may be read and signed for the first time.
Clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Powell, the 32nd, Nix, the 69th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 43, 34, 25, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to delegation of certain medical acts to advance practice for registered nurses.
Chairman Powell has moved that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears none. It is so ordered. Regulated industries. What purpose does Chairman Rhodes rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that House Bill 1057 be moved from Natural Resources to Ag and Consumer Affairs. Both chairmen are in agreement.
Chairman Rhodes has moved that House Bill 1057 be moved from Natural Resources and Environment to Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 1057 by Representative Rhodes, the 120th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 12 of Title II of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to soil amendments.
On the gentleman's motion that House Bill 1057 be moved from Natural Resources and Environment to Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. What purpose does Representative Meeks rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
To ask that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended so a bill may be read for the first time and referred to committee.
Representative Meeks has moved that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Meeks, the 178th, and others, to be titled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 8 of Title II of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to agriculture commodity commissions generally.
On the gentleman's motion that the rules of this House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so ordered. Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. If you have signed, clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Recognizing March 27, 2020 as the 50th anniversary of the Coastal Marshaling Protection Act. Congratulating and commending Tracy McDaniel for receiving the 2020 Yellow Rose Nikki T. Randall Service Leader Award, honoring the life and memory of Katherine Johnson. Recognizing and commending the Kiwanis Club of Athens, recognizing May 1st, 2020 as Maternal Mental Health Day at the State Capitol. Congratulating and commending Vicki Pruitt for receiving the 2020 Yellow Rose Nikki T. Randall Service Leader Award. Commending the Georgia Golf Course Superintendents Association for the development of the best management practices for Georgia golf courses. Recognizing March 6, 2020 as Foster Care and Adoption Day at the State Capitol. Recognizing and commending Essence Magazine as a well-respected and influential publication for African American women. Recognizing March 5th, 2020 as Georgia Nurses Day at the State Capitol. Recognizing March 5th, 2020 as Autism Awareness Day at the State Capitol. Congratulating and commending Shirley Williams-Nichols for receiving the 2020 Yellow Rose Nikki T. Randall Service Leader Award. Congratulating and commending Frida Hammonds for receiving the 2020 Yellow Rose Nikki T. Randall Service Leader Award. Congratulating and commending Linda Clark for receiving the 2020 Yellow Rose Nikki T. Randall Service Leader Award. Recognizing and commending Randy Redner. Recognizing the Coastal Georgia Honor Flight and commending Georgia World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War veterans. Recognizing and commending Dr. Gordon N. Baker. Commending several award recipients and recognizing February 22nd, 2020 is Albany African American Honors Day. Commending and congratulating Dr. Timothy B. Dees, Sr., and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privilege resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privilege resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. Okay, we have one birthday today. I think he's already had his birthday present, but please help me wish a happy birthday to Chairman Andy Welch. If you have signed up for an announcement, please make your way to the front of the chamber. Chair recognizes Representative Carter for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we have the Smooth Asher Lodge. The Masonics will be here with us in the morning at 8 a.m. I believe we'll be in room 509. If you all would like to have breakfast with us in the morning, and we will send you an email later this afternoon. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hatchett for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Majority Caucus will meet upon adjournment in room 403. Majority Caucus, room 403. Upon adjournment, we do have lunch.
Chair recognizes Representative Jasmine Clark for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, the Future Caucus will meet today at 3 o'clock p.m. and 6:05 CLOB. Food will be provided. That is the Future Caucus, 3 o'clock p.m. today and 6:05 LOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Game, Fish, and Parks will meet in 403 at 2 o'clock. 403, 2 o'clock.
Chair recognizes Representative Dickerson for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Women's Legislative Caucus will be meeting upon adjournment in room 514, and lunch will be served. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Parsons for an announcement.
Thank you, Speaker Ralston. Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications will meet today at 3 o'clock in room 403 here in the Capitol. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lumsden for an announcement.
The Lumsden Subcommittee of Public Safety and Homeland Security, which was scheduled to meet at 1 today, will meet at 1:45. Repeat, 1:45, CLOB 506. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Ron Stevens for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Economic Development and Tourism Committee will meet today at 3 o'clock in room 415, CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Newton for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two committee announcements. The Committee on Access to Quality Health Care will meet at 1:30. Give everybody a little time to get some lunch. 1:30 instead of the 1 o'clock start time. And also we have rescheduled Health and Human Services till tomorrow. So no Health and Human Services today.
Chair recognizes Chairman McCall for an announcement.
Thanks, sir. Ag Committee will meet at 8 o'clock in the morning in 406 in LOB. We got several things we got to see about. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Chokus for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Academic Achievement Subcommittee of the House Education Committee will meet at 2:30 in 514 CLOB. And at 3 o'clock, the Academic Support Subcommittee of the House Education Committee will meet at 3, also in room 314 CLOB. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That completes our announcements. The chair recognizes the Majority Caucus Whip, Representative Kelly, for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House stand in recess until 3 p.m. today and then stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, March the 4th.
The Majority Caucus Whip has moved that this House be in recess until 3 o'clock p.m. today, whereupon we would stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 4 at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. This House will be in recess until 3 o'clock p.m. Then we will stand adjourned until Wednesday at 10 o'clock a.m.